Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-hosts, TV, aka TV on Basketball, alongside my co-host, Jay, aka the Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
It's going great, man. NBA Finals is about to kick off. TV, I'm very excited. We are finally here. Somebody in a couple of weeks is going to be hoisting up the Larry O'Brien trophy. And somehow we have to focus on NBA Finals basketball. Amongst all of this crazy off-season news, TV, is hard to stay focused, but we're going to try to cover this properly.
It's hard. I mean, we'll get to the off-season news in a future episode because there's just too much to unpack right now. Like this last week or so of just off-season projections and all that. It's kind of crazy. It doesn't help that Shams is already hyping this up to be one of the most crazy off seasons in NBA history. We're gonna hold off, Jay, though. We're gonna hold off because we're gonna talk NBA Finals. We're gonna do a complete deep dive on that. We're gonna talk about what's gonna happen next with the Knicks. So maybe a bit of off season stuff, but we're gonna talk about the Knicks and what's gonna happen next for that team. Talk about the WNBA. There's 2 undefeated teams left, and we're gonna decide who is gonna lose their first game one before the other. Who's gonna stay undefeated longer? And of course, we have the Prospect Spotlight, Jay, as we lead up to the NBA draft and talk about some of the lesser-known NBA prospects that we want to talk about heading into the draft. So it's going to be an action-packed episode. Make sure you lock in. It's going to be a good one today. But before we get into that, we do have to plug our socials. To make sure you follow our individual socials at TV on Basketball, at The Routine Jumper. Those links can be found in the description down below. In terms of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, remember to follow us on TikTok and Instagram. For the best daily NBA content, you got the clips, you got the post-game reactions, you got off-season reactions. Yeah, Jay just talk about the Tom Thibodeau firing, which we'll talk about in this episode as well. You can make sure to check that out all on the TikTok and Instagram. If you're new to, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss an episode. Make sure to check out the YouTube shorts there too, where you can find some of those short form content over there. And in terms of the podcast network, Spotify and Apple, make sure you subscribe, leave a like, all that good stuff. We appreciate all of y'all's support. Jay, you ready to get into this?
Yes, sir.
And Jay, there is no other place we would want to start than the NBA Finals. Jay, we're going to have the 7th straight Finals declaring a new champion. We haven't had back-to-back champions since the freaking Curry Warriors back in 2017, 2018. A new champion, like a first-time champion if you think about the OKC Thunder and the Indiana Pacers. Crazy, crazy times. In terms of when the finals are going to start, the day this episode comes out, it's going to start tonight. We're going to be doing a full deep dive into it. We're going to be providing our predictions. Yeah. Jay, there's a lot to break down here. Obviously, the Pacers went on this Cinderella-type run where it felt like a good amount of people each round were picking against the Pacers, but they've continued to prove everyone wrong time and time again. Made to the NBA Finals. Shout out to Pascal Siakam for winning Conference Finals MVP. Facing the almighty OKC Thunder, where we discussed, especially this podcast, since the offseason, this is the perfect basketball team. They play like the perfect basketball team. They've played fantastic basketball in this entire playoffs and look like the freaking major favorites in this series. Jay, what are some of the keys to victories you're going to see that you're looking for in this series when it comes to both of these teams?
Okay, so obviously the number one thing has to be the point guard matchup between Tyrese Halliburton and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Both have had very up and down finals in terms of their consistency and production throughout their postseason runs, but both of these guys have also showed up in big moments. I think that one-on-one matchup, not necessarily from a defensive perspective, because I don't think these two guys are going to guard each other very much, but I do think that there's going to be a certain level of containment that's going to be required. Obviously, for the Indiana Pacers, the goal is going to be to speed Shai Gilgeous-Alexander down, speed him up, He plays very well in a half-court setting as a guy who plays, with a strong form around his body, moves very slithery. We know about all the foul drawing ability and things of that nature. This is a guy that you almost kind of want to make quick decisions, put him in situations where he gives up the ball and doesn't hang around too much. I think the other side of it for Tyrese Halliburton is we know this is a guy who can get very passive in certain instances. He's been called, underrated. He's been called overrated. He's been called a lot of different things, but one thing that hasn't been talked about a lot throughout this postseason is that he can be a very passive point guard when he kind of is feeling the spreading of the wealth energy, and it can take him out of the game from an actual scoring productivity standpoint, and it makes him somebody that you feel like you can phase out, at least on that side of the ball, in terms of not necessarily paying too much attention to his three-point shooting ability, or the fact that he's a really good point guard to get into the rack, despite being a little, lighter size in terms of, being, finishing around the trees and things like that. So I think the point guard matchup, number one, is the biggest thing that stands out to me more than anything, with the number two thing being the Oklahoma City Thunder defense. I am watching them very, very closely because nobody has been able to truly slow down the Indiana Pacers all postseason long. They have been able to get a lot of everything they've wanted, whether it's the Pascal Siakam getting to the rack, Pascal Siakam in the mid-range, Ben Shepherd shooting from three, getting his lights out. What we've seen with Aaron Nesmith having games back and forth here and there where he's able to get the three ball down at a high clip. And obviously we've seen Tyrese Halliburton show up in big moments as well. The Oklahoma City Thunder, though, have won, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the Oklahoma City Thunder have won 4 games this postseason by 30 or more. That starts with being able to clamp up on the defensive side of the ball.
It's the biggest net rating in NBA postseason history right now if they continue the way they're going.
Yeah, man. It's one of those things where the Oklahoma City Thunder defense might be the biggest X factor of all of this. Not in terms of, any individual player. There's obviously guys that stand out, but Oklahoma City's ability to slow down the Indiana Pacers with the way they've been playing all postseason long, if they happen to be the one team that finally figures them out, that's going to be what wins them a championship. If they run into the similar buzzsaw that some of these other teams throughout the Eastern Conference have seen throughout the last month and a half with what we've seen from the Indiana Pacers, the Thunder might get pushed in a real way. So that defensive side of the ball is going to be super important because the Pacers have been shocking people all postseason.
Oh my, yeah, 100%. And that's the thing here, right? On paper, the OKC Thunder have the clear advantage. I like the way I forgot the name of the podcast, but shout out to this podcast for basically breaking this down. The Thunder are basically just an improved version of the Pacers if you really think about it. When you look at the point guard, yes, you got Tyrese Halliburton. Who did the Thunder have? The freaking MVP and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Oh, you have a really good second option, Pascal Siakam? But we have All-NBA third-team member in Jalen Williams, who is awesome on both sides of the ball. Some people might say he's better than Pascal Siakam. That's a different conversation, though. We have a rim-protecting center who can hit threes. Chet Holmgren, Miles Turner. You could say that Chet Holmgren has been better this postseason. Even when it comes to freaking off the bench, you have a pesky defender in TJ McConnell who is able to run the offense for a little bit. You have Alex Caruso who does the same thing, but even better. On paper, when you go matchup for matchup, tick for tack, the Thunder look like they have all the clear advantages here. But this is not what we've seen throughout the playoffs. Because like I mentioned off the top, Jay, people have been down the Pacers since round 1. They thought, oh, Giannis may be too good. The Pacers have no one to really contain him. They beat him in 6. The Cavs, they thought, oh, they're facing against a number 1 team in the league. This team has been too good on the offensive side of the ball for them to contain. They were able to take them down. Same thing with this Knicks team, on that end. Every time the Pacers have been doubted, have been looked over at this point, they have been able to respond well. And I think that's going to be the key here because defensively, when you look at the matchups, and you mentioned that the defense being the X factor, I feel like the matchups are quite simple because you have Lou Dort on Tyrese Halliburton, and if you see in the regular season, I know we don't want to talk about regular season basketball too much, especially when it comes to the NBA Finals. But he's held Tyrese Halliburton to 11 points on his lowest assist rate per game, his lowest field goal percentage. He's basically Tyrese Halliburton's been put in the torture chamber throughout the entire season so far, and I think that's going to be the main matchup there. And also on the defensive end, that's where you're going to hide Tyrese Halliburton anyway because Lou Dort is not going to be able to create offense for himself. So that's going to be very interesting. I just think that the Thunder, when you look on both sides of the ball, obviously an historic defense, top 3 offense in the league, it feels like they're the clear favorites here, talent-wise, and especially the way they've been able to dismantle teams all playoffs long. But man, this Pacer team, every time you feel like they're completely out of it, they always seem to surprise you. And this is why it's so hard. I would say it's easy to predict this, but also that you just don't know how pesky this Pacer team is, which is always difficult when trying to come up with a prediction here.
I think you're definitely right. I think one rule of thumb that I've tried to apply to a certain extent when it comes to this NBA Finals and just covering it a certain way is looking back at the last 2 Finals champions. And TV, there's a common thread that I realized within the last 2, and I guess if you count this year, 3 years, that I feel like we've said the same thing every time at the end of the NBA Finals, and I wonder if it's going to happen again. And that statement is,
I think I know where you're going to go with this because I was about to bring this up too.
Okay, the statement that I have is the team that we thought was the best team all year
Exactly.
just really the
Exactly.
best team the whole time, right? Because we've
Yeah.
said this about the Denver Nuggets, and we remember going into the Denver Nuggets playoff run, every single chance we got, and I'm not even just saying us particularly, I'm talking about NBA media from a more general perspective, kind of tried to anoint any other team but Denver, despite the fact that all season long they were in a real dominant fashion with Nikola Jokic being the best player in the world. We were saying from the very beginning of the season that they had the best starting five in the entire NBA. Sounds like something else that I said when I was talking about the Boston Celtics. Obviously, we
Mhm.
weren't calling Jason Tatum the best player in the world, but we were still talking about him like he was a top five MVP candidate, as we always do, with a more
Yeah.
refined starting five with Derek White shooting the lights out, Drew Holiday being an uptime an all-time level defender, Jaylen Brown, Al Horford playing at a high level. They bring in Kristaps Porzingis, right? So you look at these last two champions and you ask yourself, like, yo, maybe Denver was not as dominant in the regular season as like this as this Celtics team or that this
Thunder.
Oklahoma City Thunder team, right? But you still look at the dominance when you look specifically at those starting 5 minutes. You're like, oh, in a postseason setting where these guys are going to play 40 plus minutes a game, like they're going to kill. That's what you should be thinking. But we
Yeah.
always kept trying to put somebody else ahead of them. We always kept trying to look at the feel good story that seemed like that was the team that they made a move during the season or they did something different or maybe their postseason maybe made you like change your framework where anybody but the team that we thought was the best team was the team we were trying to anoint. It feels like another one of those things where you see this run from the Indiana Pacers. You see what they've done. You see how special they've been. And you also look at the teams they've taken out because we got to put some respect on their name in that regard as well.
Yeah.
And you ask yourself, like, yo, could they really be, the 2004 Piston team that sat there and played as the underdog the whole way through? Are they another version of that Dallas Mavericks Dirk Nowitzki run where if you remember that run that they went on, you take out San Antonio, you take out Kobe and Shaq, you take out I
The Young
believe
Thunder team,
they
the
took out
Young
the
Thunder.
Young Thunder in the Western Conference Finals, right? And you
Mhm.
look at that team and you say, like, yo, did Dirk just go on one of the best assassination runs of NBA history? And you look at this Indiana Pacers team and you ask yourself a very similar question, right? But I think, unlike how Dirk was kind of able to get over that hump against the Miami Heatles, this Oklahoma City Thunder team, bro, is just in a whole different package, dog. And that just makes me wonder, like, everything screams Indiana is about to put the cherry on top of a storybook ending. And then I look across the court and I say, but the last 2 years have told us that the best team was the best team, whether we wanted them to be or not. And OKC has been etched at the top since the preseason. Everyone thought OKC, number one seed in the Western Conference, got it done. They blowing folks out by 30 plus in the postseason, getting it done. Haven't even really shown any true weaknesses throughout the postseason, outside of here and there when they've been able to kind of keep Shea at bay or the three ball hasn't been able to fall at a high clip like you've said in the past, where Alex Caruso's kind of been their best stretch the
Yeah.
floor guy this whole postseason. Not something we would casually say, coming into the playoffs. I mean, that's my interesting question. Is the best team that we've known is the best team since the beginning of the year just simply going to finish the job like we've seen the last 2 years, or is the Cinderella story finally going to prevail? I really do wonder.
And this is exactly why I want to talk about this because as much as we want to believe in the Cinderella story in the Pacers, which has been fantastic, they have been like since the beginning of the playoffs, they have just completely turned it an extra gear. Tyrese Halliburton has been fantastic. Siakam has looked like one of the best Robins in the league. But the Thunder, plain in sight, they have been doing this right in our face since game one of the season. That they are the best. We have the best coach. We have the best system. We, as I think Edwards like to call him, we are so connected on the defensive end where it feels like we're like controlled by some sort of puppeteer, and everyone is just working together at the same time.
Yeah,
Everything just feels like it is going towards the Thunder. And
yeah.
Jay, it might be just as simple as that, like we have said the last couple of years. Jay, but before we get into our prediction, I do want to talk about kind of the keys to victory for this team. I do have a
Okay.
list for each of them. I want to start off with the Pacers though. Here's the things I'm looking for if they try to win the series. One, they're not gonna out defend the Thunder. There's just no way they're gonna out defend the Thunder. As much as how good the Pacers, they've been solid on the defensive end. They're no OKC. So how are they gonna win the series? turning this into a shootout. They need to continue to get their offense flowing and force the Thunder to go tick for tack with them. I know the Thunder are still a top 3 offense in this league, but at the same time, this Pacer team shows that they're able to go on these crazy runs. And if they're able to still be able to score on this Thunder defense and force the Thunder to go shootout for shootout, that's gonna be a good indicator in the Pacers' favor. Play the percentages, just like I said in the last series. I'm gonna continue to say it here. Make Shai Alexander uncomfortable. Make him make decisions, like you mentioned. Force him to shoot threes. They've been better in the Timberwolves series, 100%. But is that something that they want to do on a consistent basis? Probably not, because that just takes the Thunder out of their element. Make them hit their threes. Also, win the bench minutes. As much as you want to talk, we've been talking about the depth of the Pacers all playoffs long. Obi Toppin, Ben Mathurin, TJ McConnell. When Shai Alexander's off the court, when Jalen Williams is off the court, you need to win those minutes. It's going to be. I know there's going to be still a lot of great defenders, nonetheless. We talk about how much the Thunder are a chameleon team and can really like adjust to so many different playing styles. But you got to win those bench minutes, especially because the Pacers have been able to do that time in, time out. And lastly, Jay, before I throw it back to you, they just have to play with chaos. Because, like, clearly the Thunder, when it comes to these set offenses, you look at the Denver Nuggets and the way that you just know everything is going to funnel through Nikola Jokic and everyone, like, just knows where to be at the court at the same time. Same thing with the Timberwolves, knowing that's going to start with Anthony Edwards and he's just going to be able to spray it out. This Pacer team, the way they're going to win this is to basically confuse the Thunder all series long. Throw them different offensive looks, have different ball handlers. Just continue to play with such recklessness that the Thunder can't get a read on you. Yeah. And I think they talked about that. Rick Carlos talked about how they have to continue to play with pace. You got to do this against a Thunder team because once you start getting predictable on the offensive end, the Thunder will be able to snatch it up right away. So the Indiana Pacers have to play a near perfect series, but they have to do it their way. And the thing is, like, their way could really be a good counter to what the OKC Thunder do best.
I definitely agree with that. I think the chaotic aspect of it is probably the best point in terms of playing within a certain way that's still systematic, but gives you a certain level of mystery coming into a series where structure has been combated pretty well by X's and O's simply. When you talk about the Oklahoma City Thunder and what they've been able to do defensively. This is a team that gets good reads and has like very high IQ basketball players on that side of the ball, especially when you talk about the Alex Carusos, the Chet Holmgrens, and the Isaiah Hartensteins of the world that are on the back end able to kind of roam and really handle business back there. So I think that's really important. I think the other thing too is ride with the guys who brought you to the dance. I think when you think about guys that are spreading the floor really well, don't sleep on Ben Shepherd. Don't sleep on Aaron Nesmith, who have gotten a very good stroke from beyond the arc over the last couple of games here and there. I understand that this is a more athletic series, so somebody like Ben Mathurin might get dusted off. Play the averages, as TV mentioned beforehand. If Ben Shepherd just seems like he's the better defender, he's making a better play, and he's being more consistent, stick with the guy who brought you here. Ben Mathurin might be the former lottery pick, and he might fit the bill a little bit more in terms of matching OKC's athleticism. But this is going to be a think tank series. You're not going to be able to out-hustle, and you're not going to be able to out-jump the Oklahoma City Thunder. If Ben Mathurin can't tighten up, become a more efficient player, operate within an offense, and play with a certain level of physicality to match all of that, maybe Ben Shepherd ends up being that guy that you end up having to give more minutes, just like we saw in the past series against the New York Knicks. Similar thing can be said with Pascal Siakam instead of playing the ball through him. I understand what I just said about having Tyrese Halliburton be much more active as an offensive threat. I also know that people didn't give Pascal Siakam Eastern Conference Finals MVP for no reason. This guy was not only one of the most consistent players within the finals matchup against the Knicks, he was one of their most consistent offensive and defensive creators throughout the entire postseason. This is a guy who's been able to do it in all three phases, whether it's around the basket, in the mid-range, from three, and I'll give him some credit as well as being one of their best targets in transition as well, which he's been all year long, but has really been a big part of keeping their pace at a high level throughout the postseason. They go a lot as Pascal Siakam goes. I think Tyrese Halliburton is quite obviously their best player, but I think their ability to close games, which is going to be super important against a Thunder team that's used to blowing folks out by 30, their ability to close games is going to be built off of the back of Pascal Siakam's ability to constantly create opportunity, and then Tyrese Halliburton expanding that opportunity by spreading the sugar around and also making things happen with paint penetration. This Thunder team wants you to kick the ball out to the three. They want you to shoot yourself in the foot by trying to be a high-volume three-point shooting team. Because at the end of the day, they know they have the guys in the middle to be able to defend the rim at a high level. But you want to put these guys in as many actions as possible. Make Isaiah Hartenstein guard, make Chet Holmgren guard, put them in a position where now they become just as important as these guys like Lou Dort and Alex Caruso on the outsides. It's going to be a tough series, TV, like you said beforehand. We're talking about needing to pitch dang near a perfect game on a regular basis. But they have the personnel and they have the personality that we've seen throughout this postseason that says if anybody has the real chops to throw Oklahoma City off, it's the team that's kind of been playing out of their body since the beginning.
Yeah, no, 100%. They gotta keep leaning on that because, like we mentioned it, just a basic offense, a more planned out, more X's and O's type of offense. It's just not going to beat this Thunder team. They're just too much on a string. They're too connected on the defensive end to be able to contain that. Play with your play through chaos. Play through your guy in Tyrese Halliburton. That's going to be the key here. Quickly, OKC, their keys to victory. Take Howie out of it. They've been able to do that all season long. Force Pascal to be the main distributor. I know that's not the way the Pacers want to do it, but make sure they force him to be the number one guy to dominate the boards. You have Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren. Those are the guys you need to dominate on the offensive glass. I know that the Pacers might be able to force Isaiah Hartenstein off the court in certain points in the series, but you got to win. You got to dominate those boards. Also, play the 48 minutes. Jay, we talking about the Pacers playing chaotic. You got to play the 48 minutes against this team because you know that any time they can go on that freaking run at the end of the game and just like steal from your heart, just like that. So the Thunder have to play the 48 minutes because you can never count this Pacers out until the clock hits 0. They got to continue to do that, but I think that they have a bit more room for error just because even if like they do play Isaiah Hartenstein off the court, like you mentioned in the past, they're such a chameleon team that they're able to adjust their lineup so that they'll be able to match up with the Pacers' chaoticness, maybe add a bit more speed to their lineup, add some more perimeter defense. So the Thunder, they got more room for error, but they gotta continue. They gotta play the full 48 minutes. This is not a team that you can rest on.
Yeah, Oklahoma City is in a good spot. Obviously, we've mentioned the chameleon aspect of this team in a lot of different phases. I think the biggest thing for them, too, is that they can play up-tempo with Indiana, which is one of those things that makes it match for match in a real way where you just wonder because they haven't really played too many up-tempo teams really at all throughout the postseason. I don't think there's any team that Oklahoma City has played that really focuses on transition as the primary focus of being able to create offense and honestly win on defense as well.
I mean, like technically it was Memphis, but once Ja got out of there, it became like
I think that's the reason why I don't really associate it with that because Memphis is they're a different animal with it. I also would say Ja pushes the ball more for his own self creation as opposed to Tyrese Halliburton really creates this 3-man weave threat of like I could drive to the paint and finish, or I could end up doing a pop and kick. There's a lot of different options that Tyrese Halliburton kind of is more creative around when it comes to operating in transition. That I think Ja kind of can almost be deer in headlights or maybe bull in the china shop, depending on who's the guy in front of him, right? So I think it's a little bit different. So I would say that this is going to be a really interesting test because it really is. I think Indiana is basically like the polar opposite of the series that Oklahoma City just came out of. In terms of, we use the word physical so much in that series against the Minnesota Timberwolves in terms of just matching the physicality, the overall wing depth and versatility that the Timberwolves had when you go Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Julius Randle, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, right? You have Rudy Gobert in the center. This is not that. This is not there, and I'm not calling the Pacers soft. I'm just saying they play in a way where physicality is not at the forefront of how they get things done. They are trying to make you play at a pace that is uncomfortable. They're trying to play at a pace that had Mitchell Robinson needing an inhaler midway through game 3, right? This is the kind of thing that you're going up against. This is very, very different from what we just saw with Minnesota. So I'm really intrigued to see how that code switch not only affects the Thunder in terms of how they decide to play, but what they decide to do in terms of adapting to that, because we haven't seen anybody do a great job at doing that either.
100%. It's they definitely have the type of play style where you're like, okay, at least it can make, like you said, make the Thunder uncomfortable. And I think that's more than anything, that's going to be, with how great the Thunder have been, that's the only way you're going to be able to find holes in this defense, because there's not many of them.
Yeah.
Jay, one more question before we head into our predictions. What is your biggest X factor? It could be a certain play style, it could be a certain player. Who are your X factors for either of these teams, to be honest?
So I think my biggest X factor really is the universal aspect of, can the Indiana Pacers force Oklahoma City to adapt to their speed? Because if Oklahoma has to get into an up and down track meet with Indiana, this series will go much further than most would anticipate. Because that is exactly playing to the favor of Indiana, because we saw it with the Knicks a handful of times. We saw it with Cleveland a handful of times.
Yeah.
Once they start speeding up these possessions and forcing you into a 7 seconds or less operation, you realize how quickly they can come back. You mentioned playing 48 minutes. Part of being able to play 48 minutes and come back in those series where you put yourselves in a position to be fearful in the final 2-3 minutes of a game is that you're giving Indiana possessions to continuously fight and chop down at these leads. And when you talk about an Oklahoma City Thunder team that knows how to get out to an early lead, the last thing you want to do is make the game speed up in a way that's giving Indiana all these potential comeback level possessions to build momentum, right? Because we've seen what they're capable of on multiple occasions of being able to speed the game up, force the game into their favor. And what was a 20-point lead, what was a 23-point lead, becomes, we're going to overtime. Or guess what? I hit the game winner to walk away and we steal this game. We've seen it from, we have proof of concept. So that's going to be really important, because if Oklahoma City can play to a certain speed that keeps Indiana at bay, we've seen, again, Oklahoma City has the highest net rating in NBA history and on pace to hold that if they win the championship on top of that. It really is. They have just as much of a proven concept, is what I'm saying. Is defensively, they have a proven concept that says if they're able to stay true to themselves, there's going to be a handful of games that look like Indiana wasn't meant to be here. On the flip side of it, if Indiana's able to make Oklahoma City act out of their body and play more to their favor, we've seen that Indiana can make this series a lot longer than most would expect.
No, man. I mean, this Pacer team, what's crazy about the way that they play with pace as well is, even after made buckets, I think that's going to be kind of the transition that the Thunder need to, like, the switch they have to make on their defensive side. Because even after a made basket, you know that there's 2 or 3 people already down the court for the Pacers, and they're going to be able to score off of a half-court possession, which is super crazy. So they're going to need to continue to do that again. Make the Thunder move quickly, force them out of the element. That's why, them being able to control the pace of the series is, again, 100% valid here. For me, the X factors, I'm going to give one for each team. One for Indiana, Pascal Siakam, because I feel like the Thunder have a matchup for each of their guys, whether it's Miles Turner, whether it's Aaron Naismith, whether it's Tyrese Haliburton. They have someone that can deal with them one-on-one. I think Pascal is the only real mismatch they have there for the Indiana Pacers. Is someone who, if you want to put J-Dub on him, cool. He's more physical, and also he's taller than J-Dub. You want to put someone like Chet Holmgren on it? Sure. He's just going to be faster than Chet Holmgren. So if Pascal Siakam can have an all-time great series, that's going to put Indiana in a good position. At the same time, OKC, if J-Dub could be the great the great Robin that he's shown to be, especially in that Minnesota Timberwolves series, bro, they're gonna make things just like super uncomfortable for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. If J-Dub can be that great second option, just like Jaylen Brown last year was to Jason Tatum, this OKC team just becomes even more unguardable than they already are. If J-Dub can be as dominant as a Robin, so those 2 guys, the second option specifically on both these teams, man, if they have good series, it could really tilt in one way or the other.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see what J-Dub does. I feel like there's still not that breakout, standout series for J-Dub. He's just been very calm, cool, collective, and consistent. which is good. Sometimes you
Yeah.
just need your Robin to be a guy who you know is going to be present on a night-to-night basis on both sides of the floor. I
Yeah.
still think he's due though, and this could be an interesting series for it.
No, 100%. I mean, so far in the playoffs, 20 points per game. He's definitely like improved the percentages since the Denver Nuggets series, which is great for J Dub, but he's gonna have to be just as big in this one. Jay, we've reached this point now. This is what we live for. We live for the NBA Finals, the two best teams going head to head. We talk about all of these moves in the regular season. We talk about all of these adjustments they have to make, the changes like throughout the season for this moment to get to the NBA Finals to determine the NBA champion. I'm gonna throw it over to you. Who do you have winning the championship, and in how many games?
So this is safer than what my original answer was, but I think it's just because throughout our conversation, I'm realizing more how much we probably need to respect Indiana's actual journey. So I'm gonna take the Oklahoma City Thunder in 6 games. Honestly, and like I said, this was actually the more respectful version because if I'm going with what I came into the podcast with, I believe that Oklahoma City could get this done in 5 games very strongly, based off of the fact that I lead with the old point that I made earlier in the pod, which is this team just might be the special squad that's like been the best team all year long, and we just didn't want to acknowledge it until we see them hoisting up the trophy, right? We didn't want to give them the full credit of being like, damn, this should have been the front runner from the very jump. We should have never even been having these other crazy odds where at the beginning of the postseason, people were still giving the Luka Doncic, LeBron James led Lakers a chance, right? Right? You know what I mean? So I look at this Indiana Pacers team and I say, I'm gonna pay you your respects given the way that you got here and who you went through to do it. But I also look at this Oklahoma City Thunder team and I tell myself that I think they're just too good. They're too dangerous. I feel like the fact that they've pitched their fastball on a handful of occasions and it's resulted in 30-plus point victories on multiple occasions throughout this postseason says that when they're on full cylinder, nobody can mess with them. So then you pair that with the fact that now you're in this is for all the marble scenario. You're going to get essentially 5, 6, 7 games of fastball. And I just think if you're going to get multiple games of fastball from the Oklahoma City Thunder with Mark Daigneault calling, the X's and O's the way he's had, the way that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been playing throughout the postseason, I can't pick against him. I can't pick against him.
That's true. This is tough because I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to go with the Thunder. I'm 100% going to go with the Thunder here. My eyes, the way that they're winning these games, the stats, everything point towards the Thunder being the better team here. History tells us the same thing. You talk about the last 2 years, how the best team has always been able to come up on top, especially in the finals as well. I've been really deciding in how many games. Because at some point, Jay, when I first looked at the series, I was like, Thunder in 5. Thunder in 5. This I feel like at every, like I mentioned, during when I was talking about Pascal Siakam, I feel like the Thunder have just this Pacer team, but just slightly better in every aspect, which is crazy to say because of how good this Pacer team has been. But again, they've showed their dominance all season long. But then I went to the Pacers in 7 just because you see how they're able to take these good teams. They face these good teams, and they just don't make them look like themselves. We see how much they've looked in the regular season, and then you come to the playoffs and they face this Pacer team in a 7-game series. It doesn't matter because this Pacer team will just completely take you out of your element. So you're like, maybe the Pacers could do it. Maybe the Pacers can really push this Thunder team to their limit. I'm gonna go with you though. I'm gonna go with the happy medium. Give the Pacers their respect, but also acknowledge that this Thunder team has been the best team so far, has been the best team in the playoffs, best team we said ever since they made the moves for Isaiah Hartenstein and Alex Caruso, saying that this is the perfect basketball team made in the NBA today. I'm gonna go with the Thunder in 6. I feel like there's gonna be some push to shove. I think that there's gonna be a point in these first 2 games where the Pacers actually take a game on the road and really, create that doubt in people's minds, saying, "Oh, maybe the Pacer team has figured out this Thunder team. Maybe they've taken them out of their element for them to get a chance." But I think this Thunder team, very coached well by Coach Daigneault. You have so much depth. You have so many guys you could throw at this Pacer team. We talk about the Pacers' depth. This Thunder team has a lot of depth that they can go to. They just haven't been able to. They just really didn't have to go deep into it because of how good their top 7 guys have played. I'm gonna give the Pacers their respect. There's a big part of me that says, man, this could be a short series, especially if the Thunder win these first two games at home. But this Pacer team, time and time again, has proven that they're able to fight with the top dogs in this league. I'll give them 2 games. Give me the Thunder in 6. I think there's gonna be a really entertaining Thunder in 6, though. I feel like this Pacer team will be able to keep these games close just because of how unpredictable they are. They have just their explosive offense. But at the end of the day, if you keep it close, the Thunder have the guys that you could give it to close out these games. They're able to play multiple styles. This team is just too good to take down, as much as I do love this Pacer team. And we're going to look back at this Pacer team very fondly in the next few years, the next decade. We're going to remember this Pacer team. But we're just going to say at the end of the day, they run into the freaking juggernaut, which is the OKC Thunder, who have been the best team all season long.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and all your logic is very fine because I think that again, I think it's going to be a competitive six games. I don't think it's going to be like a Thunder whoop on them, but the Indiana steals 2, but every other game that the Thunder win is like by 30. I don't think it's going to be one of those. I think we're going to have another magical moment or two where the game comes down to the final minute or two, and it's going to force Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Tyrese Halliburton, Aaron Nesmith, Pascal Siakam, Chet Holmgren might have to make a big shot, right? Like we're going to see real, storybook finishes to a couple of these games. I just think you look back to the preseason when you talk about the Alex Caruso acquisition and you talk about the Isaiah Hartenstein acquisition and we talk about this word chameleon when we focus around the Oklahoma City Thunder and how they've been able to adapt to every single series. The biggest cherry on top to proof of concept would be winning the finals in this sense that they would have literally won the championship doing it where they won in every single way necessary. They played a close set of games in a crazy series against the Denver Nuggets, right? Where a bunch of different things happened that were absurdly crazy. Everybody almost forgets because it was so far ago. We saw a game-winning dunk. That don't happen, dude.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? That doesn't happen. You play a physical series against the Minnesota Timberwolves, one where Anthony Edwards was on a run where we were calling him the OG Slayer. And guess who was next on the list? The MVP of the league was on the other side of that. And a lot of people would have been right to favor the Minnesota Timberwolves after seeing what Anthony Edwards has been able to do over the last 2 seasons. Guess what? They were able to match that energy too, and Oklahoma City got that thing done. Now you look at another series like this one with Indiana, and this change of pace is a completely different focus from the Denver Nuggets series, from the Memphis series, from the Timberwolves series. It's a completely different phase. If they're able to complete that, I mean, you literally are looking at it where you say, Oklahoma City, can you win close games? Yes, we sure can. Oklahoma City, can you play against up-tempo teams? Yes, we sure can. Oklahoma City, can you match the physicality of some of these double big lineups and super wing versatility squads? Yes, we can. That, to me, that's called a perfect basketball team. And that's the team that usually wins the chip. At least in most instances, that's the team that wins the chip. And the last 2 years, at least, have proven that in its own right, that if you can do that, you are going to have a pretty good chance of raising the trophy at the end. And Oklahoma City, I'll say this, they might be the perfected version of both teams we saw win the chip the last 2 years. Because I think you can make an argument that this Oklahoma City Thunder team would beat both that Denver Nuggets team and that Boston Celtics team in a 7-game series, in my personal opinion.
We might be just seeing a historic season just come to a close here, Jay. Just from top to bottom, from preseason to now, seeing this team being able to win in just so many different scenarios, be able to play with such depth, play with the MVP in the league. We might just have a perfect season in our hands, and the Thunder have proven to us time and time again that they've shown that they're the best team. I think this could be the case once again. Let us know what you guys think down below. Who you got winning this series? How many games? Do you think it's going to be shorter than what me and Jay think? Do you think it's going to go longer? You're going to give the Pacers that respect? Let us know your thoughts down below. Jay, let's move on past the finals. Man, I'm just super excited for this, by the way. I'm super excited for the NBA Finals again. Starting tonight as the episode airs, it's going to be interesting, especially if that Pacers thing. I can't wait for the conversations around this series if the Pacers win Game 1, bro. I am so excited to hear what people are going to have to say for this. But yeah, we're going to move on to the next topic. And we're going to talk about the team that the Pacers were able to dismantle in Game 6. The team that probably had the best season they've had in 20+ years, Jay? I think they haven't made the conference
easily
finals
to me.
Yeah, for sure. The New York Knicks end up getting eliminated in the conference finals. They lost in 6 games. Great season from Jalen Brunson. You have two All NBA second team members in Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns. You make the
Mm-hmm.
move for Mikal Bridges in the last offseason as well. But Jay, their offseason already started. They already fired Coach Thibodeau after having the best season in 20 plus years. So you already know that the Knicks mean business. I'm gonna throw it over to you. Where do the Knicks go from here? What do you foresee for the team moving forward?
Well, obviously the Knicks, they have to establish who their head coach is, and they have to figure out based off who that head coach is, what type of philosophy they're going into next season with. Obviously, they were built on defensive versatility around Jalen Brunson, allow him to cook, average over 25 points a game, add a secondary shot creator in Karl Anthony Towns, who might be a dip defensively from what you would like on a consistent basis under a Tom Thibodeau-led team, but he gave you a good 20 plus points per game to be able to give you a solid secondary option next to Jalen Brunson, given the fact that your guys like Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, and those type of guys are not necessarily there for being able to, run up the scoreboard. They're there for the switchability and the ability to take Jalen Brunson out of the main actions and still have that switchable aspect of guarding on the perimeter. So getting the head coach is going to be the biggest thing in terms of establishing a philosophy. Obviously, Mike Malone's name has come up already. I think people have mentioned Mike Budenholzer. I don't think he's going to come out of the woodworks. I think he still has 2 more years of getting paid by the Phoenix Suns after getting fired. If I'm him, I'm not getting fired from the Phoenix Suns and then going into the New York market and
I can see that.
knowing that I'm getting a guaranteed couple M's and a check just sitting on my couch. Instead, I'm going to walk into New York and get screamed at coming off of an Eastern Conference Finals to do better than that. That's kind of tough. So that's kind of a rough situation. It'd be interesting if they went with a first-time head coach, the Kevin Ali's or I believe, the UConn head coach comes up a lot
Yeah. Mhm.
in those certain conversations. That's just a very interesting like step to me because it feels like you're almost giving yourself a gap year unless you feel like you're having a Nick Nurse boy wonder moment, which TV is funny that I even say that because, we had the conversation off camera about this New York Knicks team being so similar to your 2019 Raptors team where the summer before, they get rid of Dwayne Casey, they get rid of DeMar DeRozan, and in the same summer is when we watched LeBron James go to the Western Conference. And you
Yeah.
ask yourself, like, dang, if Dwayne is still there and DeMar is still there, but LeBron is still out the paint and he still goes to the Lakers. Could the Raptors have done that with the homegrown kid, or did they still need a Kawhi Leonard? Did they still need a Nick Nurse in order to go to that next level? I remember when we talked off pod, you said you still felt like it was one of those things that it was more of like there was so much stagnance with the roster and so much stagnation with just the franchise at the time of constantly hitting your head on the goalpost but never really winning the game
Yeah.
at the end of the day. In this case, going to the NBA Finals, winning the NBA Finals, that you felt like the shakeup was still super necessary. You look at a New York Knicks team that hasn't had it any better than the last 4-year stretch, really 3-year stretch with
Yeah.
Tom Thibodeau, right? As they've increased their win totals over the last couple of years and gotten further along in the postseason over the last two to 3 seasons, right? So you ask yourself, like, yo, how much of a shakeup did you need? Maybe you just needed an even weaker Eastern Conference where the Celtics aren't going to be as good. Cleveland could be making real changes this summer. We still don't even know who Philly really is. Giannis might not be a Milwaukee Buck, right? You put all of these things in to one big old pot, and you ask yourself, could Tom Thibodeau coach this team into being, another top 2, top 3 seed in the Eastern Conference and just get it done in the postseason against a much weaker crop of superstars? Only time will tell, and obviously it's all hypothetical now because we won't be able to see Tom do it. But at the end of the day, the biggest question is the biggest question. Is Karl Anthony Towns still going to be on the team? That
Yeah.
would be the second thing. Tom Thibodeau's replacement and what happens with Karl Anthony Towns are going to be the 2 biggest questions for the Knicks this summer. And unfortunately, I think both of them have to be answered very quickly because I think the offseason is going to really kick off, especially when it comes to the trade market, within the next 2 to 3 weeks right before the NBA draft. So they don't have any time. They don't have it, or let's say they don't have as much time as they would probably like to go through this kind of process because they're going to need to be in that mix for the Kevin Durant's, the Giannis's that are
Yeah.
coming up, and their names are already coming up. but you're gonna have to move fast because unlike you, there's some teams that might not be as successful as you right now, but damn sure have better packages than you do right now. So you're
Yeah,
gonna have to get on those phones quick.
it's 100%. This offseason is big for so many teams, especially in the Eastern Conference, like you mentioned. I mean, we're gonna talk about this in another episode, but the Toronto Raptors are already in like some of the biggest trade rumors.
Mm-hmm.
You already see a team like the Cavs already potentially making some big moves, and I think the injury to Jason Tatum has really like set the message throughout most of the East, saying, "Look, it's wide open right now. You
Mm-hmm.
could be one or two moves away from potentially winning it all, winning the Eastern Conference, getting a chance at the NBA Finals. Now, of course, you're going to have to probably face against the Thunder next year once again, but at the same time, the East is wide open at the moment. That's why I feel like the Raptors are making these type of decisions. This is why um, maybe teams are really trying to go for Giannis and Cooper because it feels like this is a good chance for them. I mean, the Knicks are one of those teams that potentially we talked about it off pod. If Karl Anthony Towns is in the trade, maybe Giannis could go the other way. But
Mm-hmm.
for this Knicks team, I do think this team is going to probably stay mostly the same. They have 1 full year of Mikal Bridges. They're gonna have a full year. They do have a full year of Karl Anthony Towns. He did come super late into the off season, maybe a few days right before training camp. But you get a full off season with them. You have a lot of question marks in terms of the bench unit, and maybe you can start to rebuild that. And I think when it comes to this next head coach, and I think they did it like I think there's a report coming out of this after the Tom Thibodeau thing. The whole playing your starters 40 minutes a game throughout the regular season is not something that this next organization wants to go through. And I think they have come to at least a overall conclusion and overall confidence to say that whoever our next coach is going to be is going to have to help develop the young talent, use the bench a bit more, make this a more balanced roster. We know that this is a very good starting five in the league. We knew this going into the season, but
Mm-hmm.
you could tell with the Tom Thibodeau teams, whether it's this year, whether it's the year before, at some point this team just gasses out. I know you have to play the Indiana Pacers, who is going to force that out of you, but at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, you have to admit that in Game 5 and Game 6, this Knicks team looked exhausted throughout most of this. You talked about freaking Mitchell Robinson needing a freaking gas tank in Game 3. This Indiana team had this Knicks team running and rotating on defense every single play. So, with that being said, if they're able to stay still with the main core, which I think is the most likely scenario, I
Mm-hmm.
do think they can still make it far. Even with a new head coach, this team has been able to play with each other. Now that there's maybe not that overwhelming threat of the Boston Celtics, which felt like they were running the East there for a couple of years, that's out of there. Maybe this Bucks team where Damian Lillard is not going to be 100%, he's probably not going to play the entire year. That's another spot that's going to be open up. The Cavs are going to have to make some moves. The Knicks could still be that team that has the connection, has the chemistry to really be able to have a chance to go further to the playoffs. Because as much as people want to like make it out to be, the sky is falling or whatever, they were still 2 wins away from the NBA Finals at the end of the day, if you really think about it. So, I mean, it's plain and simple. It's right there. But at the same time, they're going to need to make some choices. If the bench is going to be a main concern, they're going to have to rebuild that bench and make it so you have guys that you're able to trust for most games in the regular season. Maybe that means Tyler Kola gets more time, Pacom Dadier gets more minutes coming into next season. The Knicks can make some moves, and I think it's more for the perimeter, like the outside of the core. But again, just like these other teams, if the opportunity presents itself, if they are able to think that there's a package out there for Karl Anthony Towns or some of these other guys, which can really take them to the next level, this might be the year to try it. Just because it just feels like there's some guys that are available that have not been accustomed to being available, or maybe they're just these packages that, as a Knicks team, if you want to get the opportunity and you really want to go for it, you have the piece to do so.
Yeah, they're just interesting because you do have to ask yourself whether or not a Kevin Durant, like for example, is a guy that comes up a lot, like a Kevin Durant, obviously Giannis, I think improves their situation significantly, right? I think that's just going to be harder for them to get to. I feel like there's just too many teams that can compete with that kind of trade package. But let's talk about like Kevin Durant, for example, as a guy who's been brought up. Like if you have to move on from Karl Anthony Towns and you send him to Phoenix in exchange for Kevin Durant, like are you a better basketball team? Like, or do you just slightly increase on the margins, or do you somehow get worse because that's not at your center position? So now you still have an injury prone Mitchell Robinson and you still need to improve your center depth behind that. Like, you have to ask yourself these questions. Like, the Knicks are in an intriguing space because they could slightly get better in one area while taking a step back in another. There's also the aspect of it where maybe they could get a Kevin Durant and they actually just be significantly better because they just need a guy who can be much more impactful on the defensive end while giving you that 20 plus points per game. Because we know that Kevin Durant can be maybe not an elite level rim defender at the wing position, but still a high level rim defender at the wing position. And then maybe in a center market where we have the Clint Capellas of the world, we have the Day'Ron Sharps and those kind of guys coming off the books that can be maybe budget baller pickups in the offseason. You can get that depth for, a much lower price. And now you have Kevin Durant, a backup center slash a functional starting center next to or in front of Mitchell Robinson. You have a better offensive shot creator in terms of the perimeter creation that KD brings. And you still stick with that, that rangy wing depth kind of play style where you have Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, KD at the 4, and then you have a solid 5-man at Mitchell Robinson or some type of backup center like Day'Ron Sharp or someone that fits the bill. I mean, you're looking at a really good team. We're looking at a squad that I think whether they kept Tom Thibodeau or not is going to finish as a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference next year. I'll stamp that, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But for me, I'm going to stamp that I think the New York Knicks are still going to be a top 3 team in the East, no matter what they do this summer. When we start having a conversation about them being NBA championship caliber, I think they are one solid move away from truly being able to fix that. Not getting a center being the solid move. No. It has to be something that increases their versatility offensively next to Jalen Brunson, who was a detriment defensively. And when the water was able to be shut off through 3 quarters, most of the time with Jalen Brunson, this team wasn't able to create offensively on a consistent basis. They need somebody who's going to be able to take that load in a real way as well. Karl-Anthony Towns was able to do it here and there. We saw the 20-point fourth quarter against Indiana at one point, right? But somebody like a KD, somebody like I don't know if Paul George necessarily fits this team for what I'm saying necessarily, but like that ilk of player kind of is the next step to like definitively put them at the front in the driver's seat for the East, where I'm like, now this team is the best team in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, like I mentioned, they're especially a team like the New York Knicks. They literally could be like one move away from really being considered as top contenders in the East. I mean, they're probably already like one of the best East teams anyway. But like being like in that upper echelon of the league, and they have the piece to do so. I mean, like there's people maybe act like the sky's falling there in New York. They still go like 2 top 20 players in the league, and I think like when you have that and you have a decent supporting cast, especially when you look at the starting lineup, they're in a lot worse places to be in. And I think the Knicks have the options to go in multiple directions. It's going to be super interesting to see, and I think it does still, like you said, start with the head coach, nip that in the butt early, make sure that you have that guy in the room, just so he can be informed of the decisions, be a part of the decisions making with the team moving forward, kind of to fit through his ilk. That's how you could see this team going. But you got a top 10 guy in Jalen Brunson, you have a All-NBA second team guy in Karl-Anthony Towns. Either way, like you mentioned, they're going to be one of those top teams in the East, and it's going to be interesting to see which direction the Knicks go to. Let us know what you guys think down below. Where do you think the Knicks go from here? Who do you think the next head coach is going to be? It's looking like it's going to be one of those assistant coaches, like we mentioned off the top, like the Suns got and the Cavs. Or it could be someone like the UConn coach, like you said, Dan Hurley, potentially being able to come over to the Knicks. It's going to be super interesting. Let's see how this Knicks offseason pans out. Jay, moving on to the next topic, we're moving away from the NBA and talking WNBA, but we're still kind of sticking in New York because, Jay, we talked about that this is possibly going to be the WNBA Finals matchup. More and more as we look through the WNBA every day, these two teams just continue to dominate. The Minnesota Lynx, your second team, is currently right now 8-0 to start off the season. They have looked absolutely fantastic. Nafisha Collier looking like the MVP. Best player on the offensive end, best player on the defensive end. Fee has been completely amazing this year. Then you got the New York Liberty, who, man, 7-0, crazy net rating of plus 20-something in the league so far this year. Historical rate in terms of hitting the three-point shot. We talked about how big of an addition the Natasha Cloud has been. Great early season success, and now you got people like, John Cole Jones getting into all WNBA form. Sabrina Ionescu finally hitting their shots. Breanna Stewart obviously being a great two-way player. Both these teams have been super good, have been incredible on both sides of the ball. But Jay, I'm going to throw this question over to you. who's going to lose first? Because both these teams have looked super dominant in their respective conferences. It's hard for me to say, and I'm looking at the schedule right now, man. I'm like, when is this first loss going to happen for both of these teams? It's super tough, but I want to hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah, man. So the bias in me is gonna say that the if you just look at the schedule, as of when you guys will be as of when this episode will be released, they play my Washington Mystics again, only a couple days removed from just getting completely mollywopped by 22 points.
Yeah.
And if I use my local bias, I would say that with Kiki Iriafen coming off of Rookie of the Month,
Give the shout out to Kiki, man. She's been
Yeah.
She's been 13-10 to start the season. She's been great.
Yeah, and my bias would say with Kiki Iriafen coming off of Rookie of the Month that the Washington Mystics get their get back on the day that this episode drops, right? If they don't, boy, this gets kind of spooky, right? Because Chicago's been up and down, a lot more down than up. Indiana still probably will be without Caitlin Clark by this time when they play on the 14th.
She might be back. Again, it's one of those things where it's like, we'll reevaluate her in 2 weeks. That doesn't mean she'll be back. You know what I mean? It's like one of those.
Yeah, Alicia Gray just came off of being named Eastern Conference Player of the Month for Atlanta. That could be a really good game with Alicia Gray and Ryan Howard playing at a really high level.
That the dream
on the other end, you look at Minnesota, they're in a pretty good space as well. Dallas, that might be a dub kind of chalked up because Dallas hasn't been too solid too far this year. Seattle is always going to be a scary matchup for them. I'm gonna say also because I'm biased, I'm gonna say New York loses first. And I'm going to say that they lose tonight, as of when this episode is going to drop, against my Washington Mystics. If that is wrong, I think their next loss doesn't come until June 17th against Atlanta, because I think the Dream have just been playing at a really high level. I think they're in a really good space right now where, they're just getting really good production from across the board. I just mentioned before, and what Alicia Gray and Ryan Howard have been able to do. The pickup of both Brianna Jones and Brittany Griner this offseason has been huge for them as like two players that are like combining for just over 25 points a game. And I believe, Brianna Jones is averaging almost a double-double herself. This team is playing really, really well. So I would say if they don't lose to my Mystics tonight when this episode drops, they're not losing until the 17th where they play against the Atlanta Dream. On the other side, Minnesota, I think that their earliest loss isn't going to come until, they could lose to Seattle on the Wednesday next week. I would also say that's a pretty good rest time in between that Dallas game. Oh, man. I'm going to say if they don't lose against Seattle, they're not losing again until maybe that matchup against Vegas on the 17th. So this is a situation. This is a situation where these two teams might lose on the same day. They might, based on what I just said, the earliest they could lose is within the next 2 days, and the next latest I'm picking them for is they both lose on June 17th. That's crazy.
It's definitely going to be close. I will say that. The Lynx, top 2 defense, top 2 offense. Fisher Collier, like I said, she's been the best player in the league so far this year, for sure. Everyone, I feel like, has had a good season. When you look at Cordy Williams having another great year, Taylor McBride coming back. The only person who hasn't really got her shots off is like Brittany Carlton, who is having a horrible shooting season to start off the year. Hopefully that can turn around for her. But it's so tough because the thing about the Liberty, right? And the Lynx had like a stretch during this early part of the season where they won 3 or 4 games. I think they were missing Fee for 1 or 2 of them, but they had like these really close games with teams which, let's be honest, they should have been more comfortably. I know one of them was against the Connecticut Sun where the game was like super close and they had to pull it out at the end. But the Liberty, besides 2 like close games to the Fever and the Valkyries, have been whooping teams, Jay. It's like
true.
It's definitely a tough choice. Here's the scenarios I see. I think that the Lynx' next tough challenge, like you mentioned, is going to be the Storm, which is next Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, I think they're going to lose to the Aces, like you said. I think they're going to end up losing to the Aces, which means they're going to be, 9, 10, 11, 11-0 before they get their first loss.
Mm-hmm.
But I am going to go with the New York Liberty here. to go a bit longer. Because Jay, I feel like although the Atlanta Dream have been amazing to start the year, again, shout out to Alicia Gray who won Player of the Month. But I do think with both these games being at home against the Atlanta Dream and the Mercury, I think they're able to pull those out. And Jay, I don't foresee them losing another game until the 29th.
Wow.
I think it goes that far. I've seen like some graphics recently with some of the best starts to the regular season. I think this Liberty team is going to be amongst the greats in terms of the best starts to a WNBA season. So that means right now they're 7-0. Mystics win. Chicago wins. So that's 9. Fever, Dream, Mercury, Storm, Valkyries, Mercury again. I think that's like 16-0. I don't.
Yeah.
I honestly think they're going to start the season 16-0, historic start. Again, they're already having an historic start from deep. This 3-point shooting, they had a freaking 20-point, 23 game earlier this year. Like, it's insane. They almost doubled the score of the Connecticut Sun the last time they played. So the dominance of the Liberty, I think, is going to continue on for these next couple weeks. And I think that we're not going to get their first loss until the end of June. That's how confident I am in this Liberty team. If they're able to get through that first Atlanta Dream game, but I do think they're able to pull that off, especially at home. I think that road game against the Atlanta Dream is going to be definitely something to look at, and I think that might be where they have their first loss. But I foresee a very historic start to the season here for the New York Liberty.
Hey man, TV staying consistent, very high on the New York Liberty since the preseason. Kind of felt like this was one of those years where he seemed like we were gonna hit our first back-to-back champion. I think that's actually what you predicted on the pod as well. Yeah. And it's one of those things where a 16-0 start to the season is definitely a way to not only set the tone, but show that the defending champ is not wasting any time letting the rest of the league know that they're here to stick around. We've seen this in the past with the Aces, where they were a team that when they won that first championship, that next year back, they came back just as dominant. And I mean, it was a long year for everybody. I mean, so yeah, I don't blame you for going that route. Now, I have a lot more faith in not only Atlanta but Phoenix right after that. In that early stage of that run you got. And again, I have my DC bias as well with the game that'll be happening tonight as of recording this. So it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting. But like you said, I think you make a very strong point on this. If they get past that June 17th, June 19th, dang near back-to-back against Atlanta and Phoenix, I think they got a pretty good road to get another win or two when you talk about having to go up against Seattle and Golden State before you start, worrying again about basically running it back against Phoenix and Atlanta in a flip.
No, man. This team is super good. Jonquel Jones has had a phenomenal start to the year, looking like, again, another All-WNBA first team appearance upcoming for her. It's going to be interesting. I'm definitely going to be looking at that Lynx Vegas game, man. That game is going to be, like we both mentioned, that might be the strongest test for them so far this year. And the Aces want their revenge after seeing like their conference rivals go to the WNBA finals. So that could be definitely something to look at. But I do think this historic start for the season for the Liberty will continue. Let us know what you guys think down below. Who do you think is going to end up losing first? Do you think it's the Liberty? Do you think it's the Lynx? Let us know. And by the way, has anything changed? Like, by the way you look at both the teams, do you still think that the Lynx are going to be like the champions at the end of this?
Hey man, until anything else is proven against it, I feel really confident in them. You mentioned beforehand at the very beginning of the season that without Fee, the games were close. When you put Fee in the lineup, guess what's been happening? Absolute ass whoopings. So when you look at the situation, I definitely feel more confident in the finals that we predicted.
Yeah.
When we start talking about the finals income, I think, the finals outcome, that's a little bit different of a conversation, just given the fact that, obviously New York has just been so dominant.
Yeah.
But hey, if I'm calling it, I'm still going into that series believing that the Minnesota Lynx have the best player in the series in that situation. And so far, both teams have played up to par for us to see a real, round two of the WNBA finals. So we'll just have to see.
At the end of the day, they both look like they're going to be able to be the number ones in both their conferences. So it's going to be interesting to see how they ended up at the end of the year, but these two teams have looked phenomenal. Jay, we're going to move on to the next topic of the show, and this is going to be the final segment. As we've said, leading up to the NBA draft, we're going to be doing a prospect spotlight. 1 point from each of us. We're going to talk about as like kind of those guys, whether we could go to the top of the draft, whether we go like just some guys that we are very interested in going forward and wanting to talk about in terms of like kind of especially. I mean, we're trying to go down to the deeper end prospects to give you guys some of the info on that because you're going to hear about the Cooper Flights, you're going to hear about the VJ Edcombs, the Ace Baileys, all that. We're gonna try to give you some context on some of the guys that maybe your favorite team might get in the later first round, the early second round, like Jay mentioned last week with Maxime Reynaud or stuff like that. So we're gonna be putting talking about the NBA draft prospect spotlight here now. Jay, I'm gonna throw it over to you. Who is the draft prospect you're gonna be looking at this week?
Yeah, so the guy that I want to talk about is Cedric Coward out of Washington State. This is a guy that's going to be probably flying up draft boards over the next couple of weeks, and a guy that's going to get mentioned a lot more coming off of the NBA draft combine, with his measurements being almost a full foot above his regular size. He's 6'6", but I think he has like a 7. I think it's like 7'9" wingspan or something like
No,
that.
no, no,
Like
no,
the
no, no.
dude,
7'2". It's 7'2".
it's 7'2". Okay, I was about to say it's something insane when you factor in his size and athleticism. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So 7'2" wingspan. Yeah. This is a guy who started out playing Division III, ends up stepping up to the stepping up a level, going to Washington State. Actually, was in the fray of deciding between either going into the NBA draft or accepting a Duke offer, which goes to show you how high they are on that situation. Yeah. If you were worried about what it was that he could possibly produce, this is a guy that Duke was going after saying, hey, man, he might be another missing piece next to all these crazy freshmen we about to bring into this class. But the I guess the best way to break it down for me is the reason why I'm so interested in Cedric Coward is because he fits the typical 3-and-D mold that you're looking for in this version of the NBA, and it doesn't grow on trees, right? You're 6'6", 215, as TV corrected me on beforehand, 7'2" wingspan, 21 years old with real athletic chops, a dude who can shoot the ball at a high clip. He shot, 38, nearly 40% from three on regular threes and shot over 40% on catch and shoot threes last season, which puts him in a real position where you're talking about a guy who can definitely operate on spot up situations and drive and kick situations. He's a guy who, because he plays so much bigger than he is, which feels crazy to say at 6'6", but because he plays so much bigger than he is, he can operate on the perimeter as a slashing wing, get to the rack, finish around the basket at a high clip. He's a smart guy. He's a very smart guy with and without the basketball as well, as a dude who can make really good decisions as a passer, operate in a short roll. Like, I like the IQ aspect of a 3-and-D wing like this. And when you start using names like Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith. I've seen Kawhi Leonard comps. I've been tricked by this before. We have a Patrick Williams spotting, and I feel as though I'm not going to allow myself to get tricked by it again. So I'm not going to say Kawhi Leonard, but I've seen some people comp him to Kawhi Leonard already. I won't get tricked by that again, because when we got Patrick Williams, I was drinking the Kawhi Leonard comp Kool-Aid. I am not going to do it this year, but I am going to say that when you start being put in those names, like I said, the Mikal Bridges, the Cam Johnsons, the Dorian Finney-Smith, these are guys who not only are high-value rotation players in a starting lineup for championship caliber teams and playoff series winning teams. These are guys who usually have the 10, the 12, the 15, year-long careers, stick around for a long time and constantly are considered as real contributors across the league, whether you're an up-and-coming franchise or a team that just needs another guy on the wing to be able to help, on defense with versatility or give you another knockdown shooter. Cedric Coward is going to be one of those guys that if you look at Tankathon, he's slotted at like 39 to like the Brooklyn Nets. There's no way that this guy dropped a Duke offer to get taken in the second round. Somebody's going to take a high flyer on him in the first round, and somebody's going to be very, very happy with what they get. Because I think this is going to be a special guy at a position that, again, doesn't grow on trees. And when you find a special talent like that, you aim high and you reach. You don't wait and let him fall, because you'll mess around and get tricked, and you'll have somebody like Toumani Camara get traded to the Trailblazers, and you find out he's an all-NBA caliber defender that you just traded off of a team like Phoenix that probably could have used a dude like that.
Man, I had to I was interested in this day because you mentioned him being 39th. I've seen him jump off. I mean, I talk about Noah Senge jumping up draft boards recently. This guy said Cedric Coward has been jumping off draft boards everywhere to the
Yeah.
point where I've seen him as high as 15, Jay. And this is like someone who is a 21-year-old, someone who's coming off shoulder surgery this year. This is some like, and the thing is, he's only played 6 games this past season, but he has such a good NBA level play style that, like you said, someone's gonna take a chance on it. And his shooting is no joke. When you look at the combine, I know this is the combine; it's not the NBA defense, yada yada yada. But this guy hits 72% of his open threes in like 72 out of 100 of his open threes during the combine. This guy's
Mhm.
shooting is legit. He has fantastic mechanics, and if someone that can play the defensive like can use his length, can really like contribute on the defensive end. He's someone that could be like really good in the NBA, and like we mentioned, someone who could be in the league for a long, long time. Seeing the film of him being able to go into open spots, being able to make the great extra pass, take a couple dribbles to the rim. He's confident in his ability, and I think something that I think we talked about this before the episode started. There are just certain factors where you see a guy jump up the boards like this. Someone like when you see the story of Cedric here, started in Division 3, moved up into D1. Someone who like was no one's radar, but finally like got here. Just shows the work ethic and the ability to work on his game that you got to be like, especially like these like top teams. You got to look at him saying, if this guy's willing to work this hard to kind of like move himself from a D3 to a D1 level player, like have like this very valuable skill set in the NBA, someone's going to take a chance on him. And I think it might be like in the late teens, early 20s for someone like Cedric Coward as well. I am a big fan of his, especially looking at the tape. He's been very, very good. But Jay, you talking about some of the comparisons. Is there any comparisons that you see? I mean, did you see in him like that you've come to mind, or any teams that you think that can like reuse someone like Cedric?
Okay, so again, the comps I think are the ones that I mentioned earlier. I
Yeah, yeah,
like
sorry.
those. The Mikal Bridgeses, the Cam Johnsons, the Dorian Finney-Smiths. I'm gonna stick there. Again, the Kawhi Leonard comp came up. I'm gonna pump the brakes on that for right now, just because I feel like it's one of those things. Andre Iguodala could be another very good one. You want to be careful about those because that's another high IQ wing player that kind of grew into a different role compared to what he was drafted as when he was picked up by Philadelphia. Compared to what he obviously ended up becoming in Golden State, I don't think Cedric Coward is what Golden State Andre Iguodala was. But similar to Amin Thompson, I think there's kind of that growth period where those are two guys that can have that upside defensively with that wing position that kind of fit that perfect 3-and-D wing. You can plug and play him into any kind of roster and he fits. If we're talking about actual teams that make the most sense,
The
let me
thing about him
see.
and compared to someone like we said about Noah Senge last week, like
Uh,
this guy has like NBA level shooting already, which is like going to be
True.
super like, which is super valuable, especially for like teams in like the 20s or the late teens who have playoff aspirations. So maybe this guy could be really like a plug and play type of guy already, which is super interesting.
This is a guy who I think could go as high as 9 to your Toronto Raptors. I feel like he fits the athletic wing build. He adds the shooting that's much necessary for your team as a guy who can knock down threes on catch and shoot and operate in a real way as a slasher. I think he can get taken as early as 9 if we're talking about that. And I'm not going to lie to you, TV. If San Antonio keeps this pick, I think this dude is going to shoot into the lottery. I think if San Antonio keeps this pick, he doesn't fall past 14. My three favorite teams for a guy like Cedric Coward is going to be, I think your Toronto Raptors are a very interesting fit because they still need another 3-point shooter, like stretch the floor type, and I think it still fits the wing. We're going to play, long and athletic kind of, framework that you guys have been going after for the last couple of years. I like San Antonio as another stretch wing type that can kind of take over. Obviously, we've heard Keldon Johnson's name in a lot of trade rumors as well. I think they need something a little bit more sure thing. I also think they need somebody with a lot more upside. If there's something that needs to be considered with a guy like Cedric Coward he is 23 years old and has kind of like this set NBA ready jump shot coming into the league. And then the other team that I think would just be really interesting is, doesn't he low key scream Miami guy? to me, he is an interesting Miami wing guy to me. He screams Miami/Orlando as another like really interesting spot for me as well.
No, I was thinking your Orlando Magic. That was like my first like when I looked at like where he was kind of projected to go. I feel like he fits Orlando like perfectly, especially if they can finally get that point guard next to him. I think like he could be like a long term, as like a fourth option to that starting line, but very much plug and play. Could play with like many different teams. I like him in Orlando. Jay, I hate to be the guy to give more to the wealthy, but man, him in OKC.
I was thinking it too, but I just can't, man. Look, dude,
Yo,
this team hasn't even played. Nikola Topic hasn't even played yet.
Yes, I know. That is crazy, which is insane. But Cedric Howard is just someone who, like, again, doesn't need the ball to do great, moves off the ball, fits into their defensive mindset already. I feel like he can just like slide right in.
Yeah,
He's like the ultimate role player, bro. And I feel like if like OKC win this, and this is what I'm saying, like they have the 15th pick because of the the Clippers pick, right? Or is it anything?
Yeah, this is because of the Clippers. Yeah,
man, I could see him falling there, and I think it's gonna be even scarier if you're the OKC Thunder. If you can have someone on another 4-year deal, I mean, you're gonna end up like you're not gonna be able to retain everyone, right? So maybe having another rookie who can potentially be a rotation piece as early as like potentially a rookie, but more than likely a sophomore guy, like bro, Cedric Howard could fit right in. I think he fits right in as an OKC dude.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting draft guy because he's a dude that came in slotted as a second round dude, and I still kind of am seeing in there, but he's shooting up boards quickly. Again, I think this is a dude, I don't think you pass up on a Duke offer, especially in the NIL era, if you don't think that if you don't think or you didn't hear back with a promise that like, yo, if you fall somewhere between we talking like the late lottery, and I'm talking like the early 20s. I'm going back to school and I'm playing for a Duke Blue Devils team that looks like they could be national championship favorites going into the year, right?
Yeah.
But on the flip side, if I got a promise, if I'm aiming, look, I think the sweet spot area for a guy like Cedric Howard is going to come between 13 with the Atlanta Hawks, who again would be building off of Zachary Risachet, Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson, like that attribute of the long, lanky wings can add some more three-point shooting. Obviously, almost is kind of playing off of their DeAndre Hunter draft pick from a couple years ago. I think that's like that range starts at 13. If I'm being most realistic, I think it starts at 13, and I'm with you. If he falls to Orlando, I think that's a good sweet spot. I picked Miami because I feel like Miami is just, I'm so used to them finding that diamond in the rough guy with the backstory that tells you like he's a NBA built ready player, but everybody's kind of looking past some of the intangible things. So I picked Miami as that one. But when you talk about fits like a glove, Orlando, Oklahoma City, those are two great picks. I think I'm going to call it now. Cedric Howard is going to get drafted somewhere between 13 and 16. If he goes earlier, power to him. But I think someone between 13 and 16 is going to end up drafting him because San Antonio, Atlanta, Oklahoma City, and Orlando are all perfect fits for what he brings to the table out the gate.
The only thing is, like, he's a 21-year-old. Obviously, like, there's always like going to be that concern with someone who's like a bit of an older rookie for sure. But
true,
again, NBA ready, can play right away, has shot up draft boards. He has an elite skill in terms of three-point shooting and being able to move off ball. If you're a playoff team, you're going to want someone like Cedric Howard. So I think he's definitely someone to look at for sure. Jay, the guy I want to be talking about here, and then at some point I was going to go with a Canadian prospect. Come on now. Going to talk about the number one Canadian guy on the board, which is Will Riley. Look, man, I had to take a look at this game. I was excited for him going into this season. And he played alongside, I think it was Yakashonis in Illinois State. Then a 6'9" shooting guard, Jay. A 6'9" shooting guard, 185 pounds. This guy has a natural shooting touch. This guy has that weird... It's weird because like he can actually pass the ball, and he's shown, especially in the later parts of this college season, that he can pass. But he's not afraid to shoot. He kind of has that, like, especially like if you look at like Michael Porter Jr., where it's like, look, I'm just taller than you. I'm gonna be able to get the shot off. I'm not afraid to shoot no matter what. And he hit like some crazy contested jumpers throughout the season. And I think he's able to move off ball. He does like to favor the right side a little bit, but he has a good feel for the court. He's known when to make the extra pass. Good off the cut. And he already, someone who's a 6'9" shooting guard, Yes, he has to go into an NBA body. I talked about that last week. Someone like Noah Essengay, but getting into an NBA training regimen, he already has the good size. Obviously, the weaknesses is someone who has like a slim build. He can finish through contact, but when you're facing like NBA level defenders, that might be a little bit harder. He's not crazy athletic. I know he could shoot over guys, but he's not the fastest or most explosive. He needs to work on
Mhm.
his off ball defense, but as someone who already has the natural scoring touch, someone who's not afraid to shoot, who is willing to move off ball, and has like these good feel for the game moments. I feel like when I look at someone like Will Riley, I could see him. We were talking about the freaking Miami Heat. I could see him on the Miami Heat, like when they're going on like a freaking finals run, a playoff run, as just a key piece of the rotation. Who not a lot of guys are gonna like take a look at, but he's gonna make a big impact nonetheless. I think like he has a good NBA build. He has very good like skill sets that you want at someone at such a young age. I think that he's just going to be someone. I'm really talking to these guys who could be in the league for like a long time. Maybe not like the superstar star type of potential players here, but I feel like Will Riley, although awkward in his game a little bit, I feel like he could be one of those guys who could just be a very solid role player, and I think it's going to be a hot commodity, especially later on in his career when he figures out the NBA game.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think one of the biggest things that's so interesting is his ability to get to the basket. Like, I think that's one of the
Yes,
best things that opens up so much of his game because you mentioned the shooting touch is there. There's definitely some upside where if he can continue to kind of get a more rounded about mid range game, he's a guy that I think can go from being a streaky shooter to a guy who can be like a knockdown, reliable dude on the outside. He definitely is a good upside passer, like you mentioned too, which is going to be big in this league when you talk about NBA ready skill sets. Hey, do not sleep on connectors. I talk about this all the time as somebody who's
exactly.
one of my favorite archetypes in the NBA. I talk about this every single season is the backup connector point guard. I talk about how Tyus Jones is one of my favorite role players in the NBA, and it's because he fits this role of being a guy that when you put him on the floor, he just knows where to be. Mike Conley is a similar stature of a guy that just knows where to be, knows how to get people in the right places, knows how to play basketball at a good pace, and knows how to be in the right places himself. I think that being a connector is so important in this league because your ability to fit in as a perfect puzzle piece matters more than your ability to be a solo superhero that can knock down your own shot. Yes, shot creation is super important in this league. Guess what? We also have a lot of guys averaging 20 plus points per game
Yes,
in this version of the modern NBA. Not everybody has to be a self-generating shot creator. Sometimes you need to be a guy who can come off down screens and shoot the pill at a high clip. Sometimes you have to be a guy who can come off transition, fly out to the wing, and shoot the pill on catch and shoot opportunities. If he can grow into that when you pair that with his ability to put the ball on the floor and drive to the basket with good finishing around the rim, this is a dude who could be really, really dangerous. A knockdown J could be something that could become really important for him as a guy who's already really good off ball and also knows how to put the ball on the floor and get to the cup at a good space. I think the funny part about it is going to be his fit is going to be so important within a framework of a team that has an established defensive identity. So, with
yes.
that in mind, now I can ask you the question: what are some teams that you think are going to be maybe some interesting, fits for a guy like Will Riley coming in?
Okay, so this is interesting because like kind of like Cedric Coward, he is. I don't think he's gonna get drafted in the lottery per se, but I think
Okay.
he's gonna be like around like just after Cedric Coward, so anywhere in the late teens to like the mid 20s. And some of
Okay.
the teams that I'm a big fan that he can get on a team like the Indiana Pacers, who are slotted right now. If they don't win the championship, they're gonna be slotted at number 23. I think he could be a very good piece over there.
Mm-hmm.
Looky that the Thunder have another pick in the top at 24. If they want to go with Will Riley, I wouldn't be surprised. But I
Yeah.
also think like if the Brooklyn Nets don't package their picks, you're gonna need some guys. Obviously,
Yeah.
you're gonna go with the high upside guys, but you're gonna need the guys to also like play kind of the perimeter, the role player type roles. And I think that Will Riley could fit right in with the young core they got there. There's going to be a lot of guys who are going to want to have the ball in their hands. I think that he'll benefit from the fact that he could just be able to move off ball to get into the open spaces where um, he can like alleviate the pressure off the main ball handlers on the team. There's a lot of great teams, even a team like the Boston Celtics who have a defensive identity already, who could maybe like develop another like wing, especially if they're trying to get rid of like who they're trying to save money. I think if you can get someone
Mhm.
like a Will Riley at that position in the late first round, where he kind of has a skill set that kind of fits with what Joe Mazzulla wants to do, and especially if he can develop a 3-point shot, that could be massive. But I think that if he fits into a team who's already playoff made, like I mentioned, the OKC Thunder, the Boston Celtics, even the Indiana Pacers, who are kind of in that range where I think that he can get drafted. I think those teams could really benefit from someone with Will Riley's play style.
I definitely feel that. I think if you're talking about defensive infrastructure, you're in a really interesting spot there because that's where I think if you're talking about, post lottery, I think you have to look at 16 and 17 with Orlando and Minnesota, two teams that definitely could
Minnesota,
add
yeah,
some
Minnesota
much
could be,
necessary shooting.
Minnesota could be
Yeah,
too.
definitely two teams that can add some much necessary shooting, adds another driving element at the guard position, which Minnesota we saw throughout the postseason. We talked a lot about their ability to get paint touches being so important for them winning series throughout this postseason run for them to the Western Conference Finals. For a team like Orlando, again, you get a guy who might start as a streaky shooter, but has the kind of touch to develop, and with more of a dynamic front court, talking about Paulo Banchero and Franz Wagner, and you have a solid defender in Jalen Suggs next to him. So the defensive infrastructure is there. You can allow him to kind of step into that shooting role of being a guy who can operate off ball, can knock down shots from the wing, step in the corner, and kind of make things happen as a driver. That's a really interesting one. So I would say that Minnesota and Orlando are two really interesting teams. But TV, the real statement to me is if Brooklyn keeps all four of these picks and Will Riley isn't one of them, they mess something up, dog. I ain't gonna lie. I think if Brooklyn has 4 picks in this NBA draft, there's a handful of guys that Brooklyn I think just should be so like enamored with. And I think Will Riley is definitely at the top of that list. I think Will Riley, Thomas Sorber is
Yeah.
a guy that we might end up talking about on the podcast for a different spotlight. I'm not gonna lie, I think that Cedric Coward, and he's actually mocked on Tankathon to them in the second round, but Cedric Coward, I think, is another guy who kind of fits that mold of like, if you're trying to like take flyers on athleticism, shooting, drive potential, good decision makers, right, and build a culture around kind of what the Oklahoma City Thunder have done, right? Size, wing switchability, high IQ, athleticism. Like dudes like Will Riley, Cedric Coward, Thomas Sorber, Maxime Reynaud, these type of guys need to be on Brooklyn's radar. I am going to be really interested to see what Brooklyn does because whether they trade up or they keep all 4 picks, I think their draft philosophy is going to be a great representation not only of their future, but I think it's going to be a really good indication of what the league is going to be transferring towards. And because again, this is a monkey see, monkey do league, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at what Indiana and the Oklahoma City Thunder have been able to create, it's been built off of this kind of philosophy. High IQ, athleticism, 3-point shooting, the ability to operate on and off the ball, right? These different things are what made these teams so special, paired with the fact that they both have elite point guards
Yeah.
at the helm of all of it. If Brooklyn wants to become, one of these next up and coming young teams, you got 4 picks to dang near reboot your roster with these two teams in mind. Maybe you don't use all 4, but if you do keep all 4, one of them got to be Will Riley, in my opinion.
He's definitely gonna be up there. Just lastly, before we close out the pod, some of the players I look when I like think of someone like him, kind of an Allen Houston type, someone who's not the most like athletic type of guy, but who is just like tall enough for like a guard position where he could just shoot over guys, and you're just comfortable with the shot that he's taken. And bro, I can't like help but like when I look at Will Riley's highlights and when I look at the way he plays, bro, he just moves like Kevin Martin. He moves like Kevin Martin.
I like that.
It's just the type of movement, the weird type. I mean, he has a good shot, but also it's kind of like a bit awkward. But somehow it gets to the rim pretty nicely. I don't think he's going to be as good of a shooter as Kevin Martin. To be fair, like he has been like one of the most underrated shooters of our generation. To be honest, no one talks about how good Kevin Martin was back in the day. But just the movement, like the able to just like naturally get your shot off, and like even though it looks contested, he's still able to hit those like tough shots. I feel like he could like be that type of guy, like where he doesn't look like he's like moving at the fastest pace, but he's moving at his pace, and he's like super comfortable with that, and he's able to get the shot off. I think he's a great player. Let us know what you guys think down below. Who you guys think that, how do you think of these two players that we brought up? Any player comparisons? What teams you want to see them on? We want to hear all that. Jay, we have reached another end of a fantastic episode. Thank you guys for watching. The NBA Finals again start tonight, Jay. I'm super excited for it. What do you have to tell these people before we sign out?
Man, like TV said, NBA Finals is in full effect as of when we're starting, when we drop this episode. So that's going to be huge to see who takes game one. WNBA is setting the tone very early with a very strong first month of basketball to kick things off. Commissioner Cup is already kind of in the fray as well, as that's starting as a part of the season for them. NBA draft season, you see it. We're getting very excited about these upcoming prospects. And man, I mean, just the versatility of the pod, man. We're trying to tell you guys every single week to tune in. We're not just giving you NBA coverage anymore. We're giving you a little bit of everything. The NBA Finals, WNBA coverage. We're locked in on some of the NBA rumors. We'll probably be talking about a lot of that next episode, as you know, the games in between for the NBA Finals are they get a little bit more space. So we'll have a little bit more room to talk about some of these crazy rumors going around, like KD being a Toronto Raptor. TV's trying to contain himself all episode because he's hearing stuff like that, right? Or Giannis Antetokounmpo being a Toronto Raptor is one of those things that's getting real good trade buzz right now.
So you got people like, I'm gonna have my thoughts on that. Damn.
Yeah, man. You got people like TV trying to contain themselves because they're hearing their teams and trade rumors on the good side of the transaction. So yeah, man, just stay tuned, man. We're trying to lock into every single facet of the basketball space right now, and hopefully we're doing a good job. Let us know in the comment section if there's any kind of NBA draft prospects you guys are interested in that we maybe need to put on our radar, because hey, I'm always interested in these, like, lower hidden gem guys that are projected in the 40s, 50s, and undrafted, that like you're like, bro, this guy's gonna be a real hooper if he gets on the right team. I'm always interested in like the hidden gem type dude. So definitely hit us up in the comment section about that. And lock into the WNBA. The NBA Finals is the last set of real NBA basketball we have. The WNBA is gonna hold us till October, man, in terms of being able to see some real elite hoops. So lock in now, because hey man, you don't want to take it for granted. And we see the New York Liberty go 16-0 and you missed it. You missed the whole thing. You know what I mean?
Definitely gonna be keeping my eye on that. There's gonna be some great matchups over there as well. Again, talking NBA draft, talking WNBA, NBA Finals. You'll find it all here on the Hit Your Feelings podcast. Again, another great episode, and we appreciate all of your support. Make sure you check out again our individual socials. Make sure you follow along with the Hit Your Feelings podcast through all of our links below. Jay and I will be back next week for another episode, so it should be a good one. We're gonna have a lot to talk about in terms of the NBA Finals by that point. But yeah, it's been an awesome episode. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you all have a fantastic day. This is TV. This is Jay. We're signing out. Peace.